Well, season's greetings, everybody. Welcome back to our expert panel. As you'll be able to see, we've really had the place done up with a lot of Christmas decorations for you. Well, we're giving you a rest from the Christmas shopping and all that sort of thing. Put it that way. So our expert panel reconvenes, and the topic for today is delivering information across the enterprise, or cat herding, as I like to think about it. We're talking about users today. You do everything for them, and they go on and they do stuff themselves. They put Skype in, and instant messaging, and strange remote access systems where security isn't so much an afterthought as they just never bother to think about it. And we're going to be talking about how you can control that, how you can make that productive in the business, and how you can help harness their energy and not let it destroy your working day. So today, my two guests, first of all, from Microsoft, is Mark Deakin. Mark's going to be talking about how you can implement procedures and processes to make this, to make your business more productive and not stifle this energy from amongst your users. And of course, from our old mates Freeform Dynamics, Martin Atherton, who's Martin's going to be letting us know about the real status of cat herding at the moment and how well you are keeping control of your users. Not very well, I don't think. Just quickly before we get into it, the tabs across your interface. The first one is for the questions you want to ask. Please do ask questions all the way through. I'll be able to put questions to the panel because they pop up on my laptop here. Put your name at the end of the questions. It makes it more personal. Also, a download tab if you want to download the presentation, run it in a separate window whilst we're talking, or keep it for yourself afterwards, share it with your friends. The bios of our expert panel today, so that should be everything you need. I guess, first of all, Martin, it's over to you. How well are we dealing with our users?
Let's do a bit of scene setting and see whether or not some of the research findings will perhaps give us some clues there. I thought I'd start off with this potentially perhaps slightly insulting or slightly contentious comment about, so we've done a bunch of research up front before we kicked off the workshops and these webcasts, and we've also been doing a few bits and pieces like short sort of mini polls and that kind of thing, and harvesting input from the readers of the last couple of weeks.
Readers.
Absolutely, yeah, it's all from Reg readers. And to kind of sum things up in a very broad kind of way, findings from the Reg readers suggest that the users and perhaps the IT department as well are kind of making a lot of this stuff up as they go along. So let me just spend a couple of moments quantifying or clarifying exactly what it is that I'm sort of what led me to make that statement. And the first thing that I want to focus on is I'm going to read this question out because there's some small text on the slide. We asked the question. We asked the Reg readers, how much are you guys, or how much are your users adopting technology solutions independently of the IT department, or customizing, extending what IT's provided you with? And you can see that there's kind of quite a lot of doing your own thing going on, particularly at an individual level and also at a business unit or work group level. So let's just take a really obvious example, mobile devices. People want their own thing, whether they've just got an iPhone or whatever the latest thing is. But that's kind of a problem. Well, not a problem, but that's something that's been going on for quite a long time, I suspect, ever since there was, a choice of mobile device. Yeah. Absolutely. But we can look at some other areas as well, such as social networking tools. Arguably, they are proliferating, and we've already seen some organisations getting into sort of difficulties essentially around managing and actually separating out work from play, as we discussed previously on one of these webcasts, but also the kind of information that you may or may not actually end up proliferating on those things. So there has to be a kind of a rhyme and reason sort of underlying the things you do with those sorts of networking tools, whether we're talking about sort of, Facebook-type applications, corporate Facebooks exist, BT just implemented their own, for example. Other areas that users seem to be doing their own things, desktop search. But interestingly enough, when it comes to some of the more sort of, let's say, collaborative, sharing, things that would actually require sort of IT to be involved to actually roll something out. So that could be sort of collaboration portals, business intelligence tools is a great example. There's less of that. So we'll perhaps come back to that and talk about the implications.
But I'm surprised that there's still any at all, that there's so much now. I expect mobile devices and social networking, fine, I expect that there. But the idea that there's so much of this being done by users, Mark, is this what you see?
So, I mean, if you look at the statistics, it's really highlighting that consumer software or consumer kind of solutions are the things people see as being important. Really good idea, or really good example, rather. So recently I lost my keys for my motorbike at work, and so I emailed using the normal kind of system to be able to say I've lost my keys. I also posted something on Facebook because I have access to that. The security people that I just happened to know at work responded on Facebook actually a lot quicker than they did via email, and it kind of proves actually social networking tools, yes, they are slightly consumer related, but actually they're extremely useful in the workplace as well, as long as they're used in the right way. And the users kind of realise that. Biggest problem is IT kind of turn their heads the other way, say, this is something I used to upload last weekend's drunkard photos to. And they don't really consider that it can be used for work stuff as well. So they kind of need to really embrace that, otherwise the user will continue to do it perfectly on their own.
So it's like holding back the sea. You can't tell them not to do it because they're going to do it.
Yeah, you've got to embrace it, otherwise they're going to use it anyway.
Mm-hmm. I think rather than thinking about a kind of a sort of a command and control sort of scenario, there's actually maybe an opportunity to go and look at what the users are making up as they go along, because talking about sort of evolution and change, and perhaps there's a group of people that have found a really cool way of doing something, because a lot of what we're talking about today is trying to make people and departments and work groups and the business as a whole more productive. And so there's a very good chance that people in the organisation have found better ways of doing things, which are not necessarily supported by IT in terms of an official sort of an officially sanctioned system or process, but could well be a lot better than what already exists. So there's actually, rather than it being necessarily something that you've got to grab hold of and control, I think there are actually opportunities out there to find better ways of doing things as well.
I hear what you're saying, but I know it's only 10% down at the bottom here, but when individual users are starting to implement their own database and business intelligence tools, then there is a need for some discipline there, isn't there? Because that's only 10%, but that's still thousands of implementations.
Yeah, but that discipline isn't stop them using anything. It's embracing what they're trying to do and offering something that's kind of under the IT person's control. Whereas what tends to happen is shut down Facebook, shut down MSN, shut down anything that they're using, and just hope that they can live without it. And it basically doesn't work. A lot of purchasing departments use MS Messenger to speak to the companies that they purchase stuff from. If you shut that down, you pretty much shut down that part of the company. So it's certainly, I think shutting down is not the way to go, and that's traditionally what people tend to do.
So how is IT dealing with this then, Martin?
Let's take a look, because I think this next slide may well give us a little hint. So essentially what we're talking about here is, if you look at those stats, right, not everybody is doing everything on their own. However, as you rightly pointed out, 20% of a couple of thousand end users is still quite a lot of people. And the challenges we've got is, OK, take something like a business intelligence tool. Now, for a lot of companies, a business intelligence tool could be an Excel spreadsheet. And so the risks inherent in having somebody go and access a system, remove some data, play around with it, whether or not that data is sensitive or important or whatever, all of a sudden you've got it residing somewhere that maybe it wasn't designed to be, and then someone goes and loses a laptop, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you're kind of making up these scenarios, but ultimately there's some inherent risk in doing this kind of stuff. So there is, well, we've acknowledged there's a degree of doing your own thing going on. Now, this next slide looks at sort of prioritising tasks, how tasks are allocated from the IT department's point of view. And let's cut to the chase. The largest segment here, 51% of the IT guys that we spoke to, say actually we prioritise on the fly, depending on what's most pressing. So there's kind of a degree of making up as you go along in the IT department as well. Now, there might be a sort of a chicken and egg thing going on here. It may well just be a sort of product of the fact that we've just seen that there's a lot of users out there making it up as they go along as well, and hence IT perhaps feels it has to be, you know, pretty reactive to what it's hearing or what it's seeing going on out there, and that's kind of it's not particularly productive from an overall business outcome point of view in terms of you know, everybody being on the same page and moving in the right direction, that kind of thing. That said, we need to try and this is why we're here talking about it, kind of find the balance between maverick and actually coming up with better ways of doing things.
Okay, so we're not going to get to a situation where everything is perfectly controlled. The only IT that's going to be in a company is rolled out according to a series of projects that the IT department has timetabled and scheduled. We know it's a little bit messier than that, but the majority of IT departments prioritising on the fly like this completely undercuts the idea of IT that we're normally fed by, for example, by people who supply software to us.
For example, yes.
For example.
And I think the problem is the pace of change as to what consumer software people use, Facebook, etc., is a lot quicker than the IT people want to embrace it. And actually, it probably more than likely expands beyond the IT department. So it's the management within any organisation, them having to embrace something like Facebook, MSN Messenger, and not just kind of thinking it's a tool, you know, that kids would normally use rather than a business tool. So they need to keep up with the pace because the users, you know, they want that information now and they want those tools now.
We're at a time now, though, where a lot of companies are being forced to look at what the immediate value of the systems they're running is. And there isn't really time, and I'm sure there isn't really the appetite to do an exploratory study into potential value of Facebook.
True. Facebook is probably, you know, an example where there are less times when it would be useful within an organisation. Something as far as, say, for example, instant messaging, that to me sounds like a very sensible thing to at least look at implement. You know, do a pilot. Mm-hmm. Being able to know whether someone's available to speak to before you phone them, and thus not waste your time. Something like 7 out of 10 phone calls go to voicemail. So why not just know whether that person's there? When I was at university, before I'd phone someone on the mobile phone, because I was a bit tight at university, it cost me money, I used to check on MSN Messenger and then phone them up after if I knew they were there. If I did that now, why can't I do that when I'm, you know, in the office? I can at Microsoft, but working anywhere else, I should be able to do that.
Oh, you get the voicemail because they identify your number when you're calling them, that's why.
Indeed, that could very well be it, actually. Good point.
But now, seriously, on the pie chart here, though, what's the optimum state? How much should be done on the fly and how much should be scheduled and prioritised and done in a more disciplined, sort of military-type way?
It's kind of hard to say, isn't it? I mean, everybody out there needs to look at the division of labour and effort based on their own sort of requirements. I know that sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but you think about all the different types of industries that are out there. Now, something, I don't know, think of the difference between publishing and a small pharmaceuticals company versus a small financial services vendor versus a business, do you know what I mean, business consultancy. There are different sort of degrees of I don't know what the best word to describe it is, flexibility required when it comes to, hey, we've got a project on, so-and-so's going to be working with us in a different country, and so on and so on. So we're going to need a slightly different way to what we've got, perhaps, for sharing information, sharing documents, rather than just firing emails at people and that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? So it's really hard to sort of think about, you know, what the optimum one of those is going to look like, because I just don't think there is one.
But are you saying that the IT department, most IT departments, the majority of IT departments, need to get more of a grip on how they're spending their time?
Yes, and I think that they would also agree with that, not from the point of view of getting a grip on what they necessarily do, because, you know, ultimately they are there to sort of support the business in terms of providing tools that work and, you know, an experience for the user that makes them as productive as possible. Now, there are, and we've measured this on numerous occasions, there is what we've measured, and we called it the burden on the IT department. And you probably would be hard-pressed to find an IT professional that said, hey, we're happy with the burden. And we don't want to be doing anything more interesting like looking at new ways of doing something, because we're really happy resetting passwords or sending people information that really they could actually go on the internet and find out, if only they'd remember that they had a training course that showed them how to do it, and so on and so on and so on. So it's not necessarily about thinking up new ways of doing things or bringing in those new ways that they've found from the users into the sort of the allowed portfolio of things that we provide. But there is some kind of balance, and I think at the moment, hopefully we're sort of showing that maybe we're kind of slightly out of kilter at the moment.
And that's something that changes over time, right? So it's almost like they need to catch up. That means they need to implement some stuff pretty quickly. Then, a little bit later on, once it's all kind of settled down, at that point they can then start to do stuff on the fly as requests come in. So we have, like, within Microsoft, we have this thing called the BPIO model. And you basically categorise the way that you perform certain functions as basic, standardised, advanced and dynamic. Basically, you're very far behind. You have basic is you're very far behind. You have basic email, you can't get access to it anywhere. Dynamic is you can do all that kind of magical stuff, reading on your phone, speaking to your email, all of that. And so I think what needs to happen now is the people at home, they're kind of on standardised or advanced. What they need to do is get the businesses to catch up with the technology that they have at home. Once they get to that point, yes, they can relax and they can maybe start to do stuff more on the fly. But for now, I really think they just need to catch up. So I see that percentage changing as time goes by, as they catch up with what people can do at home.
There'll be a lot of IT departments hoping it does anyway.
Exactly.
But do we know what exactly the users are wanting from the IT department?
I'm glad you asked that. Let's take a look at,
As if by magic.
take a look at the next one. Now this is interesting, right? So does what we're about to talk about suggest a certain degree of frustration or perhaps impatience when it comes to the end user community? Because, as we've seen, there's a reasonable amount of doing your own thing, whether or not it's to do with perhaps the more social side of things, which does have business implications as well, or whether it's things that find them information and they can do things with it that aren't provided officially from IT. The biggest thing that users were interested in when we asked the question, which of the following are significantly driving user requirements or expectations in your organisation, is, as you can see, just over 60% said, the drive for efficiency and productivity, e.g. improved automation and that kind of thing. Now, the answer that garnered the least number of responses, interestingly, down at the bottom, is the desire to be empowered, so to be less dependent on IT for special and one-off needs. So we're in a situation that isn't necessarily wanted or has been designed by either party. It's more a case of, actually, I really want to do this thing, whatever it is, but I can't with the tools that I've got. So how do I go about and do it? And that's when, if you've got 30, 40, 100, 1,000 people doing the same thing in different ways, using the information that could well be quite important or sensitive or private or, under some kind of jurisdiction or law, depending on what industry or country you're in, then clearly that's not a situation that you particularly want to exist for, any longer than is absolutely necessary. So
this to me is a bit like a sort of a difficult teenager who won't leave home sort of scenario. Is they want all this stuff, they want IT to do all this stuff, but like you say, they don't want to be independent of IT, they want it done for them, but they want it done their way. Is this the idea that they, that they want all these things? They can't necessarily have them all.
I don't think they actually want. They don't want Facebook, and they probably don't want MSN Messenger. Sorry to go back to those examples, but they're two really good examples. They don't actually want literally those. They want something equivalent. And I think most people are sensible enough to realise that if you say, OK, you can send IMs to people, you can see their presence, but you're not going to be able to log yourself on as bigbunny22@hotmail.com. They kind of appreciate that, and they kind of realise that having a business card with that on there probably isn't the most professional thing to have. So I don't think that it's that they want these tools and they want everything that they offer. They just want to be able to use them at work. And if we give them a controlled version, that's kind of okay. I don't see that being a problem at all. I don't know whether disagree with that.
I mean, I don't know. I think maybe the problem, perhaps, is the communication between the users and the IT department, because you could probably map quite a lot of the things that the IT department would like to achieve onto this and get a similar result. If you look at the top result here, improved automation, then that's something that IT departments are looking at all the time to be able to do that. Users want it as well. And yet we're seeing lower levels of implementation of this sort of improved automation. We had a webcast about it just recently than we were expecting. Is it that they're just not speaking the same language?
Could be. I mean, the question I asked right at the start is, worlds apart or just too busy to talk? And I think the current, I'll only say this once, hopefully, because you've heard it a lot, the current economic climate kind of drives or fosters that sort of environment, right? Everybody trying to do their own thing as well as possible. Now, generally, that doesn't necessarily involve change. It involves, doing your job as hard as you can. There's some great examples in the press this week, actually, about some either IT workers or, actually, I think it was IT workers, saying that, actually, we'd be prepared to work double the hours just to try and feel a little bit more safer in our jobs and that kind of thing. Now, that's a bit of a silly example, but at the moment, I think we're less likely to see change that people sort of come to the same sort of realisation that they could do things better. That I think they're just the natural scenario is to probably just carry on doing the same harder. Now, let me sort of try and work towards something perhaps a little more.
Do you not think you don't
positive.
You don't get change though by doing exactly the same things you did the last the previous week or the previous year or the previous
No,
month?
I completely agree with you. I'm just saying that I think the way things are at the moment, i.e. relatively tough, I don't think the first thing that people think about is, we need to change something.
Yeah.
Necessarily. Backs to the wall or head down kind of thing. And this is what I wanted to get towards. Now, interestingly enough, some recent research that we did with the Red Georgians suggests that when it comes to spending money on IT, the majority of people we spoke to have actually got a pretty sensible, pragmatic view on what's going to happen. And rather than sort of, you can pick up in the press and sort of running around and sort of hair on fire and all that kind of stuff, the majority of the people that we spoke to are sort of saying, it's going to be a little bit different. There's going to be some general belt tightening. There's going to be some specific reductions when it comes to spending money on IT. But overall, it's a pretty pragmatic, controlled kind of, mindset. And I think that's pretty exciting. It's pretty, it's perhaps the opposite of what, it's certainly the opposite impression than you can pick up from the press. Now, what is it that's going to sort of allow us to keep or maintain this balanced approach? And I think that brings us around to thinking about some of the areas that we want the users and the IT departments to be thinking about. Because the natural sort of reaction to when things are a little bit tough is to look at how to reduce cost, right? Get cost out of the equation, protect the bottom line, basically. Mm-hmm. But some of the areas that I think are less likely to be thought about are around the things that we've been talking about, whether collaboration and that kind of thing, but essentially talking about optimizing the way that users use or consume IT that's provided to them, or not, as we've been talking about. Yeah. Enabling the business to be more efficient by harnessing the IT that it's got, and ultimately using all this kind of stuff to actually help the business drive the top line, which is far more important than the bottom line in the current climate, running to stand still, doing more deals with the market shrinking and all that kind of stuff. So I think starting to think a little bit further clockwise around this circle brings us right back to talking about the kinds of sort of practical improvements that we can start thinking about making, which perhaps seem counterproductive because times are tough and we've got to get our heads down and work harder. Actually looking at the things we've already got. And a great example is, we talked about sort of some perhaps degrees of frustration with people going off and doing their own thing. I mean, a stat we've got from you, which I trotted out last time, from Microsoft, I mean, something like 95% of product enhancements are for features that already exist.
Yeah.
And that could be sharing information, it could be how to log in, how to set up, an intranet, and that's a really great example. I work for a small company, we do a lot of data crunching, we share a lot of documents, or at least we did on email. Takes a couple of hours, we found, to set up a SharePoint portal. And that has completely changed the way that we work on projects and that kind of thing. And that was for a 2-hour commitment. Now, I think that's not a bad trade-off. So that kind of moves us along to thinking about, like I said, some of the areas that we've been talking about. And ultimately, it's about the tools that we use to find, change, share information to hopefully drive our business forwards and ultimately be a little bit more productive.
And
which is kind of what we're
to kind of be more productive, there's 1,001 things you could try and attack to solve that problem. And actually, with such a big problem, I think most people kind of look the other way. So probably what you want to do is to pick a couple of areas that you could see people being more productive. And it's quite important that you said there's saving money, but there's also being more productive as well. Saving money is relatively easy. It's the being more productive that is the bit that where the real money kind of comes in. So doing two simple things like making it easier to find information and easier to find people can actually give you, quite a lot of money very quickly. To give you an example, we have a statistic of an organisation with about 1,000 people in it, and they spent about £3.5 million pounds a year wasting time trying to find information. So why don't they have an internal search tool or an internal search tool to find people so they can go and find that information and save some of that money? And that's actually quite an important thing to do.
But isn't that something that is really quite straightforward for individual users to do with, for example, sort of Google Desktop, for example? And there doesn't seem to be. What's the big problem about that?
Well, the kind of thing is IT want to have some control over it.
Why? Why do they need control over that? Why don't they get on with their real job?
Because part of their job is enabling their users to be more efficient. And actually, MSN Messenger, you could say, why not just use MSN Messenger? That's fine. It's more of there is some time wasted me trying to figure out whether you're Big Bunny 27 or Dromedary 28 at hotmail.com or whatever.
Okay,
else.
guys, now stick with me on this search one for a minute, because this is the heart of the thing. Okay, if we're saying that the IT department really needs to get involved in search, for example, and there'll be a lot of people out there who are saying, we've got little individual search, desktop search being used all over the organisation, and it's doing a pretty good job at the moment. I don't really see why IT should get involved in that.
Well, you need to consider the bigger picture, really. Now, I don't want to sort of pick you up on any kind of semantic points, etc., but generally speaking, most people. Actually, this may not be true at all, but a lot of users. I know. Let's blunder down this blind alley, see what happens. By and large, most people have got some degree of control in terms of what's on their desktop. And that's kind of desktop search, right? The stepping out a little bit and thinking, right, hang on a minute. There are groups of people which need to share information. Mm-hmm. So expanding the sort of the concept or the scope of some kind of search tool further out. So rather than lots and lots of people being able to search their own information, a sort of group-wise or group-wide search tool to search the information that we all need to sort of be playing with, and that can just be applied to a working group, a project, a department, sales, marketing, whatever. And once that's kind of working, it may well be considered that, hey, actually this would be great to roll out across the entire company, or it may not. I mean, there's some great examples of organisations that implemented really cool search capabilities across the organisation, and within literally 5-10 minutes had to turn it off because people being people, how much actually finding out what the senior execs were getting paid and all that kind of stuff. So you can actually have too much of a good thing.
Yeah, but so if you have a search tool that does that but doesn't do it under the control of IT, then they can find out the IT people's wages and however much they get paid or whatever else.
And that gets us back, actually, there's a couple of points that the viewers are making at the moment based on this. They're very good regulatory reasons why a lot of these things need to be controlled. Instant messaging, for example. Yep. Why, there's good security and regulatory reasons why IT really has to sometimes be the tough guy in this and to be able to say to users, you can't do this at all. Have we got to a stage now where it's actually impossible to tell users that they can't do something?
That's a good question. I would say No, it hasn't. And we've already had some good examples. It's like, look, guys, do you think it's appropriate or inappropriate for your private Facebook profile to be used as, as a business tool, or is it appropriate to be showing that face in a corporate environment? And you've got to expect the majority of your, depending on your business, of course, right? If you were a party planning group or a stag weekend organiser, then no, that's what you'd want to be showing the world. But by and large, 99.9% of the working population would go, yeah, fair cop, you're absolutely right. However, we're thinking about coming up with a way that, we can form groups, project groups, working groups. You can see whether these guys are online in the States when you need to speak to them about accounts. We're going to bring marketing in because there's a lot of information that they've got around, lead generation or new events. Actually, the guys in the finance department, they know about people's credit histories and whether or not it's even worth inviting these guys to this event, or whether or not these guys never paid their bills, therefore there's probably not much point trying to sell them anything else, and so on and so on. So you can start to see the value, at least, of different people perhaps sharing information in ways that previously required maybe, at worst, a car journey, or at least a phone call or an email, and then another email, and so on and so on and so on. But it's then about trying to implement that in an appropriate way. And that's where you get to actually, you can't really keep saying, yeah, but how, yeah, but how, yeah, but how. You've got to look at your own scenarios and say, and pick a couple of areas that are proving to be a headache at the moment and fix them.
Is the point not that you wouldn't have to say to them, don't use these tools, don't use these tools, if you actually put something else in place? That problem, to some extent, disappears as you give them some other more control tool to be able to use.
Good point. One I was just about to ask you. Yes, because there is a reader question about that. This guy who's using 50 users using instant messaging.
Yeah.
Is there something else on the top of instant messaging that he could give them? So it's not a question of the IT department taking away. It's the IT department saying, I see what you've done with this. Here's a way to make it more useful for you.
So for me, an example would be instant messaging or VoIP is the thing I normally hear about all the time. So voice over IP, right? Yes, voice over IP is good, something you should offer someone. Actually, it's part of a much bigger thing. So today, people are typing. We're showing people something through the screen here, so they're seeing something, and also they're hearing us as well. So I think, yes, offer them VoIP, offer them IM, but offer them other similar kind of communication technologies, so whether that's voicemail, email, the ability to present remotely in a similar way to that we are here. To be honest, first get the IM and presence in is my kind of personal feeling. That's especially the presence is a very powerful thing. Once you've done that, you can start on switching on all the other kind of communication lights. And the thing I've got on this slide here is it's all about, taking all those communication tools into case rather than just centering on one particular thing.
And do we have to make a big project out of this sort of thing? Can it be just something that's done, give it to someone in the IT department, but get him to do it in...
You don't have to make a massive project out of it. And so there was the team at Energizer, which is one of the companies that we've worked with through BPIO before. They didn't want to go and do this big kind of jump at the start because it's very hard culturally to change the way in which people work. And so actually, the way that the guy put it, is they have lots of little mini revolutions. So they'll have someone in the HR department, rather than having everyone travel in to do a town hall meeting or a quarterly meeting. What they did instead was just have that over like a webinar type system. So that kind of worked there. You only do it in that department. That eventually kind of filters out. Same occurs for IM and presence. Give it to a few people. They figure out how well it is to communicate. And then that filters out as well. These things are kind of very viral. The fact that Facebook has become very popular is not by somebody saying, everyone on the internet, you must use Facebook. It's by the fact that more and more people use it, they find it useful, and then it spreads throughout the company. So it's not actually the massive task that I think people will think it is.
There are pitfalls, and the majority of not the majority, but a sizable chunk of the Reg readers that speak to us on a regular basis whenever we write articles and try and get feedback and stuff. It's rarely actually about the technology itself, and it's more about office politics, for want of a better word. So even rolling out something as simple as instant messenger to a group of people, whether it's a department or a project group or whatever, kind of has to be looked at just as much as which tool are we going to use, because while you want to foster eventually a sort of a healthy envy, like a Me Too sort of, I want one of those kind of situations. What you don't want is everyone else getting annoyed because they haven't been the chosen few to actually get the pilot projects in the first place. So a lot of this stuff is perhaps around, first of all, coming up with the right place to try and seed it, particularly now, because, everyone's kind of busy, finding, you would call it traditionally a business case, right? Justifying the business case. And I think for some of these areas that there are sort of intangible benefits which you simply get by getting involved and just using it. And you kind of, it's almost like something that sort of builds up over time. Like you say, a one-off, not having to phone someone up and leave a message, might only take a couple of minutes. But if you're doing that 20 times a day or 50 times a week, rather than just saying so-and-so's online, except, just see what I mean? So it's perhaps less about the tools.
Okay, you two, but it's a question from here. Business case, then. If we're talking about business case, what is the business case for Facebook? Actually, the question's a little bit ruder than that, but yeah. So, can we honestly make a practical business case for Facebook at the moment, or does that really have to go to the bottom of the pile? That's going to be something that we'll do sometime later.
I think not literally Facebook, so you wouldn't forklift that, drop it into your office. Mm-hmm. However, the ability to see what people are up to, so less them going out on weddings or stag nights or whatever, and actually the projects that they're working on and the documents they're updating. Yeah, totally. So if you take SharePoint, for example,
I had a feeling this was getting back to SharePoint.
Well, you kind of expect me, right? It's a given. But it's a good example of where I have these reports that I have to check once a month, right? And so there's two ways I could do that. I could email the person and say, have you updated the reports? No, you haven't. Right, excellent. Or, similar to how you would in Facebook, I subscribe to that person. When they update them, I go and have a look at the reports and then, copy and paste them into reports. So I do, which then go on to someone else. That's similar in the sort of idea that it's a person that I'm connecting to and it's information that I'm trying to grab from them. That information's just different. It's work-based in SharePoint and it's stag do based or whatever else you use for Facebook. It's the same idea, it's just a different looking tool.
I regret the use of the word Facebook so often because, and I totally appreciate the question, and I think the point here is maybe not to take it as literally as, without wanting to sound patronising, as literally as we're saying. The bottom line is that we can't really come up with specific examples or use case scenarios for everybody that's watching. But the point is, are there potentially some ways of coming up with some practical solutions that you could look at and implement over the next couple of weeks, if necessary, to make things a little bit easier for the people, trying to move the business forwards?
And the point is they don't actually want Facebook per se, right? They want something else that's similar and gives them the advantages that some of it might, but they don't want exactly Facebook, so I don't see that kind of being an issue at all.
Okay, I get it. When it comes to rogue applications, we won't mention Facebook again, but when it comes to things like Skype, for example, that, you kick it off, it comes back, you kick it off and it comes back. Is there, what can we do about that? We can't control it completely. Even if it's things like webmail that you don't particularly want people doing all day, do you give them access for like an hour at lunchtime and an hour in the evening, maybe something like that? Does that work?
I think it works. I think once you empower people to use the software, or rather use the type of tools that they want to, they're not going to spend the whole of their time doing webmail. Actually, what they'll probably do is instead of... so if you block webmail, they'll leave the office for their hour's worth of lunch, and they'll go and check their email somewhere else, right, on one of the machines, or they go to an internet cafe. They'll come back maybe an hour and a half, later, carry on their work. If you enable them to do it there and then, it's 5 minutes in the morning, maybe about 5 minutes at lunch, 5 minutes before they go home, actually you'll probably find that they do a lot more work than they normally would. It's like working from home. So I'm allowed to work from home within Microsoft. Does that mean I sit at home and watch Trisha? Not all the time, maybe sometimes, but most of the time I don't. Actually, it means I tend to get up at about 7:30, pretty much start work at 7:45 or thereabouts. Work for an hour, get dressed. So if you ever get an email from me early in the morning, you just think that I might be there in my gym jams.
So far.
Exactly. I'm going to send you one now, though, because you're going to think of that.
It's too vivid.
Indeed. But do you see what I mean?
I see exactly what you mean, and I see exactly what you mean around working at home. Flexible working has been one of these areas in which it has given users the idea that they have, well, first of all, it's created technology-aware users because they weren't supported by their company when they worked at home particularly well. So they learned how to do things themselves. Mm-hmm. And it's created people who have their own way of doing things, their own IT setup at home. Sometimes they're bringing this into the office, and sometimes they're coming back into the office, seeing what they've got there that IT is providing them with, and saying that it doesn't really match up to what they've got back in the study.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one because it takes us off, I think, in a couple of different directions. Now, the first one is that quite clearly you can't expect IT to support, set up N in somebody's house. That you're right. Generally speaking, knowledge workers in particular these days are relatively tech savvy. They've probably got a lot of their own kit at home, whether it's storage, they've obviously got an internet connection, some high-powered kit, and so on and so on and so on. And they're probably more likely to be using that than the corporate laptop. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to IT supporting all that kit, clearly it's not an issue. They weren't asked to buy it, they weren't asked to use it, they've been given the appropriate sort of regimental kit, and so on and so on and so on. So there are ways sort of around that, and this is perhaps a longer term prospect, I think, but it certainly it's become real now, and that's the concept of sort of virtualized desktops and that kind of thing. So you can actually have a private, secure portion of, just call it the family super PC, where only the worker can have access. It's secure. It has a secure connection to the office or to the corporate system, and so on and so on. So that it's certainly doable. Again, that's strangely enough, even though it sounds to me quite logical. Whenever we've done research on it, and I think the last time was sometime last year, particularly around sort of virtualized desktops and things like that, the business case is still struggling to be justified from the point of view of organisations actually forking out and spending the cash. But from like I said before, it's rarely the technology that is actually the stumbling block. It's the people and the process and the culture, sort of political and cultural hurdles that you need to get across. And I had another point, but I've completely forgotten what it was. So
that's all right. Well, I'd argue mine then, because this slide's a lovely positive slide on this again. And when you come to it, there'll be people that have listened to what you just said, and it fills them with dread. The idea of large numbers of users doing remote access to important company data, they don't know who's looking over, the IT manager doesn't know who's looking over their shoulder, where they are. And even perhaps, are they implementing their own kind of remote access, where they're bypassing certain amount of security that the organisation has spent a lot of money and has to legally put in. This is the sort of thing which encourages IT departments to say command and control is the only way to effectively get done what we need to get done at the moment.
Now, are you responding to some comments that you've had come up on the screen?
Yes.
Or are you right? Okay, that's interesting. See, I would contest that when it comes to people finding their own way into corporate systems from home. I don't think that's a statistically valid problem. Mm-hmm. I think people being careless with corporate information, absolutely.
Yeah.
But not the former example. So like I said a moment ago, I think that there are ways of ensuring that it can be done, properly and appropriately, so that information received, sent, changed, sent back, saved, whatever, can be done in the same sort of secure and appropriate manner that an IT person would be perfectly happy with someone doing from the office. But ultimately, this is the way that corporations are evolving. But everyone knows that. So this is no surprise. Granted, it's filling people with dread. It probably fills as many people with dread as it does with sort of glee and joy, right? And again, it's a question of balance.
Someone's asking about open source business intelligence tools. It's Spargo, is it?
I'm not
I
aware of
don't.
that.
I am not familiar with it actually either myself. But the idea that there are many tools, there are many smaller applications, there are many productivity applications that are available now, low cost, sometimes free, easily downloadable, easily installable. Should the IT department be trying to get ahead of that, trying to keep up, trying to produce have a large number of these ready to go, or very much is happening at the moment tends to be that users pick these up, it evolves out of a small group of users, and then IT department picks it up later. Does it matter if they're after the fact on this?
They probably don't have a choice if it's after the fact, right? So what they need to do is have a good idea of where to start. So I think one of the things you were saying was that it's very scary to have to do all of this suddenly at once. So why not maybe kind of walk before you can run, like the BPIO model, basic, standardised, advanced, dynamic. You don't go straight to the end. You don't go straight to the Star Trek stuff, as my boss used to say. You gently kind of move along. And so to do that, you just need to figure out where you start. So we, luckily enough, have a BPIO assessment tool, and that tool takes you through a couple of questions, and in there it says, okay, probably the first place you want to start is upgrading your email, because at the minute we see that as the place where you can make the most kind of money. And then you take those kind of like baby steps. I don't really want to use that phrase, but those kind of initial steps to going towards the end goal. So actually it isn't as scary as I think people make it out to be. You can do it in a pretty managed way.
I think open source, just call them tools for argument's sake, proliferating. It's a really interesting one because as an analyst we kind of look out there and see what's going on. And funnily enough, when it comes to business intelligence and content management, we've heard quite a lot from the open source community in terms of, hey, we've got this quite cool thing and it's not very much and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, people do get excited about them because users can get excited about them because they are easy to get hold of and potentially easy to get up and running. But given the sort of different sort of models that perhaps your sort of your lower cost base software provider is going to be using, whether it's software as a service or et cetera, it brings with it a whole other bunch of considerations that Mr. User probably hasn't thought through, other than does that solve my particular requirements right now? So just going off and doing your own thing without even having the conversation with the head of IT or whoever is kind of, it's just counterproductive from the word go, potentially, in that, the next project down the line might be, actually, guys, we are going to be looking at this, so just bear with us for a bit longer. And actually, that might stop you going off and doing your own thing and causing chaos. Just knowing that something was around the corner. So, again, nothing at all to do with technology.
The onus is on IT to listen, though, in that case, because if the users are coming to IT saying, we want to do this, or we're already doing this, then what you're saying is that there's not much benefit from IT in saying, don't do that, because they'll carry on doing it without thinking through the consequences of it. Now, the problem that comes with that, then, is that if they think through the consequences, they have to, whenever a user comes to them, then they're investigating, they're researching, they're looking at feasibility. It's a lot of work, and it adds to that 51% of time that's spent ad hoc. Well, that adds to those 51% of IT departments who are planning what they're doing in an ad hoc way.
But where we had those 98% features within Word or whatever it was that are already something you can do, why not just go for a couple of the simple, quick fixes, as it were, that we believe would solve a number of problems. That will, get rid of maybe 50% of the questions that come in. If you create a system that solves a load of communication problems, that'll probably get rid of, a third of the request. And then you can start working on the more precise ones that, yes, do require a lot of kind of work to figure out the feasibility, of whatever it is.
Now, with time's getting on, I know you've got a diagram that comes after this one, a slide that comes after this that we need to have a look at, because it's a bit complicated. It takes some explaining there.
Okay, so basically what I'm from this diagram, I've kind of alluded this before. There are many things that you can you can do to make your business more productive. So for this business productivity infrastructure optimization, BPIO, lovely acronym there.
Mm-hmm.
And so the two areas I'm suggesting, as part of helping people find information and find people, is on unified comms and collaboration. There are other things that we've talked about. So we've talked about business intelligence. But you don't really want to tackle these all at once. So why not just start with unifying comms and collab and kind of start there as your starting
You
point,
make it sound like the work of a morning, though, but
certainly not the work of a morning.
Yeah.
But I think if you worry about it that much that you never do it, the problem's never going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something you need to kind of face and tackle in a methodical manner, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And we're a company of 9 people. And as I said, we crunch a lot of data and we send a lot of data around. And everything we do is about either gathering, analysing, or writing about data. A lot of it gathered from the Reg readers, so we can share it back with them. And actually, our collaboration tool was the work of a morning. Literally, it was a couple of hours to set up. Now, granted, that was your basic. Here are some places to put things so that people can go and change them and look at them. So we're not firing a bunch of emails around. But that got us moving. It solved a particular sort of pain point. And that was, call it sort of 6 to 12 months ago. And now it looks that there are different places for different people to go and do, different things and that kind of thing. So it has evolved, but it got us into the same place. And in that same place, we can actually do different things, but it's still kind of there is a level of, like we've been saying, command and control, within that sort of within that framework, if you like. There we go.
You kind of did that small pilot, and that's progressed you and made you more efficient. Some of your competitors may be a bit more adverse to that. They do nothing. They kind of batten down the hatches, and actually they're a lot further back than you are, maybe, in being able to process all that information and bring it back to the audience. So by you just embracing a very tiny thing, making a very tiny step, and doing a pilot, actually it's got you a lot further than maybe some of your other competitors.
I'd like to think so. I'm not entirely sure that's true. Having come from a very large analyst firm that did have quite a substantial and, dare I say, overcomplicated content management system. So like I said, too much of a good thing isn't always productive either. But the bottom line is it's about picking some pain points, and they're going to be different depending on what type of organisation the reader or listeners are coming from.
Good question here from John. Is talking about how much investment should IT spend on communicating and marketing itself. It's one thing that was on my mind, because a lot of the advertising and the marketing that's gone on around the IT business for the last 15 years has been about personal productivity, how to do things your own way, in your own fashion. Now that's really been taken on by users. It seems that they've really got the hang of that now. The IT department saying, trust us to do things our way, we'll listen to you. Should this be a project in itself?
That's such a great question. And if you think about where a lot of IT organisations are going, it's, we've been talking about this for a long time now. The practicalities are a little bit different and a completely different conversation, but moving towards a role of service provider. And we've kind of already seen that there are, at a practical and a kind of a mindset level, competing services, right? People doing their own thing.
Yep.
So why not see, getting people on the same page as a kind of a marketing style requirement? Now, we talked about in the previous webcast about, brown bag sessions, but lunchtime sessions. But rather than saying, hey, we've rolled out a new SharePoint site, which doesn't sound very interesting, here is the way, or a much better way than you probably realised, of working in work groups, because we all know you're all over the place and you only meet once a month, etc., etc. So, not necessarily focusing on the technology. As we said, a lot of these challenges have got nothing to do with technology. It's to do with people and processes and time and inclination and that kind of thing. So I think the question needs to be answered with a resounding yes, because I think that's a really cool idea.
There's someone in the IT department who will remain nameless was describing it to me the other week as sunshine management, which is, okay, this is how we're going to do it, sunshine. Okay. So that's not what you're advocating.
Yes, but with that smiley, approachable
PR spin.
face on. Absolutely.
So it's a similar question here, actually, that's just popped out. When you've got something like a content management system, you get some different departments, obviously, are going to help with the funding for that because they get the benefit from it. So how do you work on getting as much involvement, as much buy-in to these things as possible so the project gets funded? Because the problem is, if you're promising something for everyone, you get into these endless projects that will never die, don't you?
You do, and we do see that with certain clients that we've worked with, whether it's scope creep or people piling in at the end and saying, why doesn't it do this, why doesn't it do that, this is rubbish, doesn't do it for me, etc., etc., etc. Absolutely right, and again, it's one of those planning, being kind of anal on the planning and getting, buy-in from the appropriate groups. Now, the key there, actually, and we've measured the effect of this, and it is quite, it goes back to the burden on the IT department that we were talking about earlier. If you don't have the right balance of business representation and the IT department, who ultimately are going to be responsible for implementing it and making sure it runs, then by and large you have a system that is kind of, it does everything, but it's not, as you put, it doesn't, because the scope got too big and it wasn't properly defined and all that kind of stuff, and then it's like, well, we need this, we want it, just make it work, and you end up with sort of systems that are not resilient and they actually cause more harm than they actually solve.
That's that's exactly the time that users think, stuff IT, we're off to do it our way. We can
absolutely, and then the whole thing starts again. So it is a bit of a political minefield, and it does involve planning, and it just involves a need for incredibly strong leadership and strong representation from IT, because ultimately they know at a practical level what's going to work and what's probably a crap idea.
Okay, now I know we've got a URL here which I have to get in before we finish because we're close to the end. What's this one about then?
So this is the, oh my word, where on earth do I start with all of this? Mm-hmm. This is your solution. So when you click on, when you use that link, it will take you to a lot longer Microsoft link, but we went for kind of the simple one here, nice and easy to remember. That link takes you to the BPIO assessment tool. That will basically ask you a set of questions. Out of that will pop in unified communications, we see you as being basic. These are the next suggested steps that you go and do. And in collaboration, we see you as being advanced or dynamic. Well done, there's nothing you need to go and do. So that's, by asking those questions, so I did it, I've done it a number of times. I did it yesterday, just to see it again. It took me about 10 minutes. You answer those questions, you'll have your next steps. You take them off the website, tidy them up a bit, submit them as the plan for the next year of what you're going to do, and get probably a massive bonus for coming up with such genius ideas.
Oh, again, we wish it was true, but it's sadly not. In what areas are you basic? Don't answer. Now, there's, Martin, just before we wrap up, if people are going to go away from this today with something to do, and they've got a cat herding problem with their users, if there's something that they could do today just to get them back on the right path, just to get this a little bit more under control, what would that be?
Go out, speak to some people and say which groups of people or which people are the best at X, Y, Z, whatever X, Y, and Z happens to be. And then go and look at whether or not it's actually something that you support, albeit in secret, because they've gone off and done their own thing, or whether or not it's actually such a great idea that you perhaps, it might help you sell more, or it might help you provide better customer service. You don't know until you go and find out. So just go and do a little bit of prodding around. And that could either have the result of something really great that you hadn't really thought about, or it could be the case of, actually, guys, if you just come kind of over this way a little bit, we've already got it, look. Do that next week and do it tomorrow.
Those X, Y, Z questions could very well be the stuff that's in here. So, are you good at sharing information? Yes, no. and then out of that you figure out what you're going to go and do next.
Could be a bit depressing if you found you were very basic or immature. That's the one people hate, right? These maturity models are great for sort of putting products in place.
You might want to change the spin.
You are immature.
Not say you're basic, maybe something.
Presumably
else.
it's tweaked so that nobody ever comes out as dynamic, right? Otherwise there's nowhere to go.
I can't possibly comment on that.
We'll leave that discussion for another webcast. Thanks very much, guys. That's all we've got time for. And thank you for watching today. There is a feedback button. Please use it. Tell us what you think, because we're not like the other people. We want to provide more of what you want. And so if you tell us what that is, then we'll do it. Also, there will be, this session will be available for download. That's going to be up on the Register site. So if you want to share it with other people or just want to watch it again yourself over the holidays, then please use that. So thank you very much for tuning in. Have a good Christmas, and we will see you again next year. Thanks.